share my screen. Before we begin the session, is there any question related to the previous sessions or any blockers that you guys are facing? If not, let's move on to today's session. So today's session is more about how to integrate a test project with the code, right? It's not again, as I said before, the UI features are great, but then when there are more complex things that need to be accomplished by uh, testing needs, uh, and also to have a real framework running in the background, but still taking advantage of all the test project functionalities that are there, especially the reporting and the execution. Uh, we need to integrate it somehow with the code base, right? Now there are three code bases or three platforms through which you can integrate test project. One is Python, uh, one is Java, and one is C Sharp, right? Based on your need, you can pick any one of these platforms, and then you can integrate your existing framework that you're running in any of these languages to test project, right? So you are basically having two platforms. One where you are migrate. If let's say you are working on some uh, Python automation framework in PyTest and you're running that for let's say a year, you don't want to recreate everything again in test project, right? That basically doesn't make any real sense. So what you will do is any new development that you will do it on the test project, but any migration that you will do, you can still take advantage of the existing framework and not redo everything again and integrate it with test project. So I'm going to show you one simple way of how to integrate your existing framework, which will be a PyTest framework, to test project, right? We'll not go into a lot of framework details, but I will be touching some components of framework at this point. And also I will be walking you through some of the framework components that are there uh, in the test project. Also, what we'll do is we'll talk about how you can utilize emulator in order to test locally. Uh, and then uh, mm, let's assume you might not have a real device at hand. And even if, let's say if you want to test an iOS app, even if you don't have an Apple product or Apple phone with you, how do you take advantage of the emulator to run those tests through test project, right? So we're going to talk about emulators. We're going to talk about how to integrate those emulators with test project. We're going to talk about some of the components of framework, and we're going to talk about how to integrate your code with test project. Right. So let's get started. Share my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, Sumit.
Okay. So let's go to test project. So what we're going to do is we're going to log in into our component. So this is what we're going to use. We're going to use open source SDKs. It's available. It's supporting Selenium and Appium, and it's available in three languages: Python, Java, and C Sharp. So basically, any of these current frameworks that you have, either in Python, Java, or C Sharp, you should be able to integrate it with test project. So what we're going to do is the first thing that we need. So this is where we left last time. We created a air miles and go transit test. Uh, and then uh, we had some agents. So what we're going to do is we're going to spin up an emulator. The first thing that we need to do is let's spin up an emulator. So for the purpose of this, you can use any emulator that you find. For today's purpose, I'm going to use an Android simulator, which comes integrated with Android Studio. If you so previously we used a real device that I plugged in with the USB. Today we'll be working with the emulator. Last time we also did on cloud-based mobile testing based on browser stack. But today we will solely focus on emulator and how to integrate those for your local testing needs. In case most of the people will not have those cloud platforms available to them, and they also will not have any devices, so many devices with them. So what they can do is they can basically spin up emulators that they can use without having the real device and without having uh, the cloud subscription, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Android Studio. I'm going to go to Tools and go to AVD Manager. Once I have the AVD Manager, I can create a virtual device by clicking on this link. I can select either TV, Wear, is basically your Android Wear technology. You can have your uh, Android Auto as well, or any tablet that you think will make more sense for your testing, right? So for today's purpose, I'm going to select Pixel 3a. Once you have, let's say Pixel 4, right? Okay. Once I have Pixel 4, I can basically tell which version of Android I need to install. It can be Android 11, Android 10, 8, 7, 6, 5, right? So for today's purpose, I'm going to select Android 11, right? Once you click on that, it will ask you how you want your screen to look like. Uh, and then if you want the device frame to be included in that, if you want to change your any of these functionalities or selections, and then you click on finish. Uh, if I select something that I don't have, let's say I've already installed Android 11. If I go to Android 10, I don't have it on my system currently. So I need to install that by clicking on this download. And once I have that, it will give me that space, right? So for today's purpose, I already spin up Pixel 3a XL with Android 11. Uh, it, it- the only challenge with that is that it takes a little bit of space on your disk. So you try to avoid adding too many uh, virtual devices on your system until unless you have that capability. 10 GB is not much, but then if you're running multiple Android devices, it might cause a little bit of lag on your laptop. Android Studio in general is very heavy application for Windows machine. So once I do that, once I click on finish, it will give me this row, and then I can just click on run application, and it should spin up an emulator for me. Yep. So I have this spin up for me with some of the applications that come pre-installed with Android 11. You can basically uh, do whatever you do with your mobile, right? And there are multiple options here. You can power off. Uh, you can volume up, volume down. You can rotate your phone if you want. You can take screenshots on it, or these many options that you generally face. All right, so this is how we spin up an emulator. If I go to test project, I need to go to agents and see my current agent. So there are two agents. One is a virtual agent, which will run anything on cloud without having to install an agent on your machine. And one is your local agent, which is your this. If you look here, you will have the frameworks of Java and ADB already installed, and these are all the browsers that you can test. If you go to devices, it should automatically detect your device, which is Emulator 5554. That's the name of the Android device that I have. And then the OS type is Android, OS version is 30, right? And the resolution is 180 by 2160p.
How do you get a virtual agent?
Sorry? How do you
How
get the
can you?
virtual agent? Oh, okay. So once you integrate with, let's say, cloud execution, once you select any of these options, the virtual agent will come automatically for you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. So you need to have a browser stack subscription
A-
versus LabZone.
right. Any third-party subscription you need to have to create a virtual agent. Uh, until unless it knows that it's going to execute on cloud, it's not going to install virtual agent for you.
Right. And it works like a kind of an orchestrator, right?
Correct. 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 So it works
Great.
like an
Thank you.
orchestrator. It basically you don't have you don't need an agent on any of your servers or your machines in order to execute any of these tests.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. So the first thing that you need to do in order to enable those SDKs is get a developer token. So if you go to the SDK portion here, you will have three selections. You can have the Python or C# or Java. I'm going to install Python version today. This is the command to install Python SDK, which I'm copying it from here. And then let's open up a command prompt and then do an install of this, which is pip3 install test project Python SDK. Once I click here, so I've already installed this. So it says that a requirement already satisfied. So basically, I have this installation on my machine now.
Why is your user named COVID-19?
uh, it's that time, right? No, there was some issues with my work laptop, so I had to create a new user. I thought that this is the most preferred name at this point.
Very inspired one. Yeah.
All right. So once we are done, we need to copy this developer token and we need to put this in the environment variable. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this, copy this, and edit the edit the environment variables. So what we're gonna do is, so this is the variable name that you need to keep, which is tp underscore dev underscore token, and this should be your token. Uh, you can regenerate your token if you think that uh, you lost it, or you can do a regenerate, but you can copy it directly from here and then paste it on the environment variable. This will this is required for the reason that your agent needs this in order to know that you're running through through that particular agent device. So the agent does pick up a developer token in order to do any kind of execution through SDK. All right. So we are basically, our setup is complete for the emulator and for the SDK. So we did the setup for both of them. Uh, any other thing that we need to see? No, that should be fine. So the important thing to matter is that we do have other integrations. This is basically your CI CD integrations. You can add to create a Slack webhook or your own webhook to integrate with your CI CD pipelines. And you can create your API key, which basically uh, to give access to test project if you're running as a team. All right. Okay, once this is done, let's move on to the code. So what I've done is, if you go to this, I'm going to paste this link in the chat. So you might want to clone this repository, go to exercise. This is what we have been using for our uh, other sessions, previous sessions. But for this session, I've created a new exercise called TP Mobile. And if you look here, the file that you need to use is tp_test.py. Once you have that file, this is what the file will look like. I'm going to increase the font size to explain. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is import the WebDriver. So generally what we do is when we are running a mobile test through Appium, we generally do this. We import the WebDriver from the Appium library. But for TestProject, we're going to use the TestProject SDK, and we're going to use its own driver. And then we're going to use a decorator called report, which will basically help us put it in a bucket, right, in TestProject so that we know where this test is going, right? So for example, at the report, this is the decorator, which is at the rate report. I'm going to run this test under the project first mobile project. So if I go here, look at the test project. So this is my project name, first mobile project. So I'm going to use the same project. And I'm going to run a job. So currently, if you look here, there is no job. This job will get added automatically here. So the job is the PyTest example, and the test is basic flow on test project demo app. So the app that I'm going to use is a test project app. So this is the repository for it. You can pick up the app from here. I'll show what the app looks like. But you can basically select any app, right? Like last time we selected Air Miles and Go Transit, but this time we selected the test project app demo app itself. Once that is done, the first thing that you need to do is, if you are familiar with PyTest framework, the first thing you need to do is create a test function, which is a PyTest function. And the thing that you need to consider is that you need to append test in the test name and also in the file name. So TP underscore test is the file name, and test underscore first emulator. That's the short form for what I was thinking. First emulator test, and this is how we start our test. And then we define the capabilities on how it's going to run. So the app activity is basically, you don't need to install the APK directly. You can basically provide the package and the activity to tell already installed app that this is what I'm going to use in terms of application on which all my uh, actions will be running. So this is basically your identifier for your application, right? The UDID is basically your ID for your device. For current purpose, we have the UDID listed as emulator 5554. If you go to test project in the agent section, go to agent one and devices, it should have the UDID listed. So you need to select this UDID from here and paste it there. And the browser name, if you're running it on a browser on the mobile, I'm not running on any browser. I'm running on a native app. So my platform is Android. And then these are the common functions that we're going to use. This is for the invocation of your driver with all these capabilities. So it's going to do most of the work itself by launching the application, and based on this device. You can have multiple devices open on the same machine, but it will only run on this device, right? And then the platform name is Android, right? And then you are using the same version of test project by finding the element by ID. So one is so we are finding an element with ID name, and we are doing an input of the name John Smith, and then we are finding the password. We are entering the password, and we're clicking on login, and then we are closing the app, and then we are quitting the driver. So if I need to run this test, I'm going to click here and run PyTest for TP test. I'm going to look at uh, the device and see if it is able to run those tests. So this is the application, which is TestProject Demo. It is a native Android app. It should be entering John Smith and entering, and then it closed the app and it then quit the driver. Right now, this is what you will have in your Appium, right? Uh, this is the same version of Appium. The only thing is you need to select the driver with a test project SDK. So the Appium will change to this. The rest of your tests will remain same. So if you have the PyTest framework running for Appium, you can basically use the same for running test project. So if I look here, I go to the projects, and I see that I have a job now, which is PyTest example. That's what we mentioned in our uh, job that is listed here. And if I go to reports, I should be able to view the report that is there. So uh, the run test is a job that we created last time. We deleted that job. The first mobile is the test that we created and is already there. The second mobile is also the test that we created. This is the job that we created. Inside it will be the test that we ran. So if you click on this test, you'll be able to get a summary report and a full report on agent one with the device of emulator 5554. And these are the basic flow of the test project demo app. So we find it, we looked for an element with name, and we type John Smith in name. We find the element password, and then we put the password, and we did a login, and we clicked, we looked for the element login, we clicked on it, and then we closed the app. And that's exactly what we did here, right? We looked for the element name and entered John Smith, and then password and login, and we clicked on it, and then we closed the app. So it lays out your test in a very easy to read uh, fashion. You can basically, this is the name of the test that we provided in our code, right? So this is how easily you will be able to integrate your existing framework, be it in Java, be it in Python, be it in C Sharp. You'll be able to integrate it with Test Project. Any new development that you guys are doing, you can utilize your existing framework or create a brand new test from the UI itself. Right now, the idea is that the emulator is important in the sense of developing those tests. Because let's say there is a recorder, right? You're recording your test. You will not be able to record those tests on cloud devices. Execution is fine, but recording becomes a little challenging in terms of uh, basically it needs to be in the same pane, right? And it needs to identify those elements. With emulator, it becomes a little easier because you don't need the actual device. So let's say I have a window machine and I need to create a test for iOS app. I won't be able to do it unless I have the device handy. And even in that case, right? Even in that case, it will be really challenging to integrate your Apple device in uh, on a Windows laptop, right? So that's why simulator does help a lot in terms of avoiding all those issues, especially when there are policies, enterprise policies that some of the most of the USBs are disabled in a lot of companies. So emulator works perfectly in that regard. Any question till now?
How do you pass the token?
Sorry again.
I just wanted to ask, how do you pass the dev token? You just have to put
Yeah.
it inside your path.
Right. So the dev token is passed using environment variable. You can dynamically set your environment variable using OS library in Python. But what I've done is I've added it in my environment variable. So it has a permanent location. You can definitely use any OS command to set the dev token in the code itself. But for today's purpose, what I've done is I've added it as an environment variable uh, in Windows OS uh, on the environment variable screen. So if you look here, so if you look here, this is where I've added the token under the variable name TP-dev token, and then variable value. The PyTest will give you that flexibility to pass this token dynamically whenever you're running your test. So you can set the environment variables uh, in your test itself or in your uh, environment setup fixture in PyTest.
How would you think it would be better if you are working
So it depends. It
with a
depends.
team
Right.
on the same
It
project?
depends. I would prefer dynamic setting, but if you don't want that token to be visible to anyone else, then you might want to put it on the server itself and don't pick it up uh, from the code, right? For in our case, we have our security reasons to not put any of the API keys, any of the dev tokens, or anything in the code base, because a lot of people can access that code base and they can use that token for the wrong reasons, right? So what we do is whenever we are running on a server, we have we have a specific file on that server, because that server access is limited to only the owner of that server, and we keep all the API tokens and dev tokens under that file, and we write in a command in our code base to pick up the environment variable from that file.
And it's also dependent, like say if you're sharing the same script with the multiple like people on a multiple machine, then
Right.
it's more like better to having a dynamic instead of like a system variable,
Correct.
right?
Correct. Yeah, this method is not recommended until unless you are running it on your local. It's always better to do a dynamic setting of environment variable. But then if you're running through CI/CD pipeline, let's say Jenkins, Jenkins will allow you to set environment variable inside the job itself, right? So you can once that job runs through either Jenkins or Bamboo, it's going to provide you with that environment variable, uh, which you can utilize in your script. Does that make sense?
Yep. Could
Yeah.
you try, or did you try swapping the UDID capability with device name capability and saying Android emulator?
So you mean this?
Yeah, just write Android emulator and change UDID to device name. Yeah, name with capital N.
And change this to Android emulator?
Android emulator to separate words with yeah, first caps, yeah. Can you do a quick run and see if it
Sure.
works?
Nope. So this is the error I'm getting. So it basically
Looks
is not.
like it doesn't work. Okay.
Nope.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Sumit, I have one question.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll ask it.
No, I'm done. Ask.
Can you change device name to UDID quickly?
And keep Android emulator.
Yeah.
That's not going to work for sure.
It's going to throw error because token
Yeah.
is not valid, right?
Yeah, okay. I think it works in a local APM. That is why I've asked you to try.
Okay, okay, okay. No, because it's not running through the Appium engine. It's running through test project agent. So the test project agent only takes specific capabilities.
Yes, I got it. Yeah, thanks.
Sumit, I have one question.
Sure.
It is related to like the supported platforms, right?
Mhm.
Like frameworks.
Right.
So, like like is it compatible with the BDDs as well? Like
Yes, yes. So anything that you can use on top of Appium is compatible with that. Uh, so for me, I use BDD sometimes uh, o- one level on top of PyTest. So I generally use PyTest BDD or Behave. These are two of the frameworks in Python that is built on BDD, but BDD is only an abstract layer of what your code is doing inside, right? So even if you are running a mobile test framework BDD, you still have to write the Appium code. It still needs to initiate the device, right? So that code beneath the BDD framework is still Appium code. So you can basically replace the Appium code with the test project code and keep everything else intact and in the same way.
okay, got you.
So it's basically the flexibility that it provides is that you can run any framework on top of it. You can run any kind of uh, multiple reporting mechanism if you need. Uh, without so let's say whenever you create a framework, let's say it's your existing framework, you are validating. So you're fetching. So I'm putting the username and password, right? And let's say after I put username and password, I get a metrics that this is my 10th login, right? Now that the number 10, I'm not able to validate through just using test project UI, right? Because I have to I have to hit the backend, the database to get that number and match it with what I'm getting in the UI. And that's where the integration, mostly the code functionality works because it allows you the flexibility to integrate it with any kind of validation that you're doing beneath the actions on the UI, right? If I just create that test through test project UI, uh, I won't be able to do it. I need additional functionality on top of it. And that's where the code will help me achieve that. So in Java, if I say if you're running Cucumber, you are still creating Appium instances beneath that Cucumber framework in order to execute it on device. Cucumber itself will not allow you to do that, right? Um, so in that sense, you still retain the Cucumber functionality, but then when you are changing from Appium to test project, that's where you are required to make changes and integrate it with test project. So basically, you will have uh, a one UI for all the executions and for reporting purposes. In the next session, we'll talk about CI/CD through test project. That will make it more clear on where to set environment variables and how we can use dynamic settings that we can do through the code to test project because we'll run uh, one one portion of CI/CD will run directly through uh, test project and one portion of CI/CD will run through the code base.
Sumit, in a chat, like Ramona, she asks one question if you have, if you can answer that.
Sure. Can you have more than? Yes, you can have more than one agent. Yes, yes. You can have more than one agent, But what do you mean by multiple test environments? You mean one running on dev, one running on prod? If that's the case, it basically doesn't matter how many instances or agents you have. Agent is just a command executor. You will still be enabling those dev or prod in your project test project itself. So if I say that I'm going to run this test on dev, I have to mention here that the app package is demo test project hyphen dev dot demo, right? Uh, and test project app activity test project hyphen dev dot demo. And I'm going to provide this capability as a separate environment. And for prod, I can do hyphen prod, right? The agent doesn't have anything to do with the environments. Agent is basically a command executor. All your commands either come through the code or through your test project. So if I'm going to create different environments, I have to uh, go in the project and create multiple jobs. One job will be based on prod and one job will be based on dev, right? The configuration of environments is a little trickier in test project. You can use different so if you go here, so you can provide your data sources or parameters here for execution, and you can provide the environment names here. And basically, you can pick up those parameters when you're executing the test and run the same test on different environments. So these parameters are dynamically picked by test project, right? And you can add those parameters inside the test steps itself when you're launching an application. But it's much more simpler doing it via code, where you exactly know you're creating a dev environment and a test environment and what parameters needs to go. Because sometimes what happens, why I don't recommend this, because there are multiple parameters that needs to be added for different environments. Uh, and that causes a little bit of confusion on what test will pick up what parameter, right? And it takes maintenance because you have to go test by test. Another challenge with running on the UI is the reusability component. So if you're, let's say, the login function itself, uh, you're writing it here, you can create a function separately for just the login and call it again and again in a different test. Whereas uh, this makes it a little bit trickier, not perfect. You can still reuse those components by creating multiple tests and calling that test. But then that becomes a little, that requires a little more maintenance. Because then if you need to change something, you have to figure out where else and what parameters does it combine to, and what else needs to be changed in order to do that. So one thing that I don't like about the UI portions are the reusability components, and that's a very important component when we talk about any kind of framework, right? You don't want to write the login function again and again and again, right? So in that case, uh, so for example, I can show you this, right? Let's go to test and let's look at the page objects, right? Now, Android. So this is basically a example in the Python SDK site. So if I go to login page, so if you look here, right, uh, this is not on, this is basically a test on a on a browser in a mobile app. It's not an Android, but the basic remains the same, right? So this is the reusability. Login as, you provide different username and password. Now to do the same thing in uh, in your UI, you have to create either a data source or a parameter, right? And you don't know how many username and password you need to provide, right? Let's say you want to run it as 50 users. You have to manually add those there in one by one through the UI, which takes a lot of time. So if I go to, let's say, profile page, right? Now, this is basically it created a class of profile page, and then you can maintain those uh, one-stop maintenance areas, right? Which is basically wherever you're going to use profile page, this basically resembles a page object model. All the elements on the profile page will be listed here, right? And then you have multiple actions on that page that you can do, right? So this is the validation that uh, this example is doing, which is saved message is displayed. You're validating that. Greetings are displayed. Update profile, right? Now, update profile you can use from any section of the app. If you're running through the code, you can just call the profile page instance and use the update profile by providing these parameters, right? Now, in order to do that again and again and through the UI, it becomes a little trickier, right? So this is a great example why code is preferred just over UI. But if you have a small project and you know that your workflow is not going to change a lot in that small project, you probably want to ramp up pretty quickly in one day and want to provide the output to the team. But when it comes to bigger projects and complex projects and where reusability are really important, is really important in the sense that you are not the only one working on the project. There are multiple people working on the project, then reusability does make a lot of sense. In that case, and if you want to follow a framework, let's say page object model framework, you would prefer writing it in code rather than doing it just through the UI. So if I go here on the examples, let's say drivers. Now this, I think this will have that implementation. Let's say Android driver test. So if you look here, what it is doing is it's running a PyTest framework. So this is the driver. These are the capabilities. And then, yeah, so this is where it's actually calling that instance, which is login page. Test example on native Android app. It's doing a login and it's login as John and Smith, right? John Smith and 12345. So this is your username and password. And then it's going to the profile page and updating that profile with these parameters. Pretty simple, right? But if you need to do it in the on the UI, you have to create a data set uh, in order to do this, right? And you have to provide these parameters under the test step itself, right? So if I go here, let's select it. Let's select this element. Here you need to actually do a lot of manual additions in order to do those kind of actions, right? You need to provide the parameters here. You can select those parameters here. You can add different conditions here. Uh, and then you can actually use the data sources as well to add a data file, and then you basically use that data inside the test, which is a lot. For me, it's a lot more time consuming rather than just doing it through the code itself. But if you're, again, as I said, it only makes sense if you're running a large project and you know there are going to be a lot of permutation combinations on your framework, a lot of data sources that are required, and a lot of reusable functions that will require arguments, right? In that sense, the code will make perfect sense. Any questions on the code base?
Can you upload this code to TestProject and create
So
a
I've
pipeline
already,
for it?
yeah, I've already uploaded the code. So if I've already provided the link uh, on, where is the Teams? Yeah. So if you go here, so this is the link. You can find the code here. If you click on this link, you will find all in the exercise section. There is a folder called TP Mobile. You can the code is already uploaded. So you can just go there. tp.test.py is where the code is already loaded.
No, what I mean, if you can run an automated job on TestProject to run this project, this code automatically or scheduled run.
Oh yeah, sure.
I think you cannot do it unless you have a UI record project, right?
I think so. I think so. You cannot do it unless you integrate it with with any CI/CD pipeline.
Yeah, so you can't do it locally. Okay.
Yeah, you can't. So you have to you can integrate it with your CI/CD pipeline. We'll show that in the next session on how to integrate it with Jenkins and run it through either Jenkins or Bamboo.
Okay, but you need to do it locally or from your local server, and it will just push the
Yeah,
results in TestProject. Yes, is this what you
no,
mean?
you don't need to run it locally. You can run it on any server, or you can run it on a pipeline, right? We can run it via Bamboo or via uh, Jenkins, right? But definitely you need to have uh, the emulator or the real device installed on that machine if you're running it locally. If not, then uh,
Hey,
uh,
Sumit,
yeah.
there is some echo. Is it for everyone or is it just for me? There has been some echo.
It's okay for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay for me as well.
Okay, all right. So there's some echo. Maybe I'll log out and log in again. Yeah, sure. Thanks.
All right, but yeah, you're right in that sense that if you want to run it through Jenkins or Bamboo, it makes more sense that you run it on a cloud platform and not on a cloud platform with the real device and not on because you won't be able to run hooking it through a USB cable with your real device. That will be a local testing. But there are ways that you can install emulators on your server, which will can be a Jenkins slave server or a Bamboo slave server, and run it on that local server. But it's a little challenging because that needs to be a Windows or Windows device or an Apple device, which will not be the case mostly because mostly these are Linux devices. But definitely the ADB drivers has the flexibility of providing you with those emulators in the local. But if you're creating ideal case, if you're creating a CI/CD pipeline uh, using your code base, you want to run it uh, on a cloud-based service, right?
What what is the case with your integration with the browser stack and the cloud agent? Does it run automatically
Yeah.
on the browser stack mobiles and collect the report into the test project?
Yes. So if I'm not sure if you have attended the previous session, but if let me go to, let's say, this test. Let's go to the reports. So
And the
if you look,
most important question is that these tests are recorded via test project. They are not uploaded by the code, right?
sorry.
These tests are recorded manually with the test project recorder, not uploaded by the code, yeah?
No, so I have not recorded this test uh, with the code, but these tests are recorded and executed in via browser stack.
But where is the code base?
So yeah, so this is the thing, right? So if you're running on browser stack, you have to integrate it with uh, your CI/CD pipeline. You cannot run it using the test project UI. So you are right that we cannot run locally direct code base uh, on browser stack devices.
Okay, thank you.
But we will be able to run it through Jenkins pipeline. So showcase that next week on how to utilize the code base to run on browser stack.
Yeah, sure. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
Sumit, just a quick announcement, if you're okay with it.
Sure.
I just look at the list of attendees, right? So J, and then there is a QA2, Ripper Factor. I know someone, right? Ridesh, I think Sanjay. You guys don't have Seams Testoper account, so please, send your email addresses. We will add you if you have not sent it in the past. Add you into our collaboration platform. So if you are able to, have that access, then you should be able to ask questions and answer them with the community through that collaboration platform. So Sumit, do you want to quickly share your screen? How does it look like, the collaboration platform, just to be sure?
Uh,
The other one, the Teams. No, in the Teams you should have, the left one, yeah. So this is what the collaboration platform is. So you should be able to send questions and receive and things like that. That's the first one I wanted to say. And the second one is in the chat. There is a WhatsApp link is there. So it's only for the closed group for the attendees, and it's not for sharing anything, but it's just for the emergency in case if you have to cancel the session and things like that. We normally use the WhatsApp. So there's a link in the chat. You can use it. So two things: collaboration platform. If you wanted to add, send your email address, and WhatsApp link. You can add and join the WhatsApp group, closed Codeathon WhatsApp group. That's the second thing. And the third thing is you also will see in the chat that there is a certain criteria for the people to get into the raffle to win the prize towards the end of the session. It's also available there. You need to attend all the sessions, as well as you need to post in the LinkedIn with the tags your experience about this session, and talk about Testoper, TestProject, as well as Sumit and so on, right? So you need to do that to qualify. So these are the three quick announcements that I wanted to quickly make. With that, let me again, hand over it to Sumit to close the session for this week.
Yeah, so Sanjay sent a nice link on continuous integration with delivery with Azure DevOps and Test Project. Yeah, this is one of the way that we can do. There are other ways we can do, but definitely there will be service hooks that we need to run uh, and to run it on the cloud, basically from end to end. So we'll talk about it in our next session. Till then, any other questions on today's topic on the coding part of test project with SDK?
Sumit, I have one question.
Sure.
When you do the test through recording, right? So
Mhm.
does it, can we get a code for that recording, or it's not possible?
No.
Okay.
So
Hey guys, I forgot mentioning this. Sumit showed in the screen the GitHub and the location where he's put the code and so on, right? So just for you to know, at Testoper community, we have our own GitHub account. And if you wanted to, again, join that GitHub account to get the code or participate in some of the codes and things like that together with the community, you can again send your GitHub ID in the chat. We will add you into that GitHub account as well. Sumit, over to you.
yeah, so yeah, there is no functionality on test project where you can basically convert that script or steps into code, specifically because they might have to do it 3 times, right? If on which platform they're going to uh, put the code, is it going to be Java, Python, or C Sharp? So yeah, so currently there is no functionality of downloading that as a code. You basically have to, what it will help you do is get the steps. So once you have those steps, you can basically go on the code and create those steps uh, without investigating too much, because all the elements and everything will be provided. Though they're not perfect, you might still have to do some research on what's the perfect element path or uh, ID or anything that you want to capture. But yeah, there is no functionality on test project to download that code.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, it would be a really cool feature though.
Yeah, I thought at least if they can provide, default or something, right? Maybe it would be helpful to start with that. Yeah.
And that's also challenging for them because then they don't know which language to provide the code in, right?
Right, but they might be using something to execute, right? How will they
Yeah,
execute this
definitely,
test?
definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Any other question?
Nope. Looks like Sumit, another one top-notch session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so
Right?
much, everyone. Yeah, I think we are over time as well. So for the next session, we'll work on the CI/CD pipelines on the test project, and we'll again touch on some of the components of framework again. Uh, and then we'll talk about how to create uh, advanced framework components using the code base itself, uh, not just the UI, but UI. I will be walking you through the parameter section as well as the data sources section.
Yeah.
More
Guys,
than that, I think I will be yeah, I won't do that. I will probably pick up a couple of add-ons that are really nice on test project, and we can take a look at those add-ons.
yeah, guys, what's also important is you attending just during this 1 hour and forgetting it is not important, right? What's more important is after this session and before the session, you collaborate in the channel, Testoper Codeathon channel, ask questions, and if someone has questions, someone answering, and maybe Sumit engaging Sumit to get some answers, that would be more beneficial for all of us and also for the community. So try to get into this channel, and it's like a Slack, right? Get in the channel and try to converse with your fellow community members and work through it would be very useful for you as well as for the community. I think that was my last word. And again, Sumit, top-notch session. I know that you have lots of things in your head to cover in next 3 sessions, and I'm looking forward to the remaining 3 sessions to close this topic successfully.
Next 2 sessions or 3 sessions? I think 2 are there.
I need to double check. Whatever, we'll double check that offline.
Yep.
Okay. And guys, remember to send your email ID, GitHub ID, and join the WhatsApp link. Collaborate before and after joining the Microsoft Teams. All these things are very healthy for the community, for you. And it's all about continuous learning. You need to keep on continue to learn to keep yourself up to date, especially during this COVID situation where most of us have got impacted. The continuous learning is the key. When situation recovers, we can be top of the game. All the very best, guys. Have a great evening. Looking forward to see you all next week, Wednesday. Take care.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks, Sumit.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Karan.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Wonderful, guys. Wonderful. Take care. Bye-bye.